Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast from Taipei, Taiwan. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Is this place a ticking time bomb? The situation extremely tense, especially after China started fresh exercises. A large number of Chinese warships and fighter jets and surveillance aircraft have once again crossed Taiwan's air defense identification zone. They violated the ADIZ, and the United States, the top US commander, has said enough is enough. There must be consequences. There must be a hit back. Now, top US commander, he is the commander of the 7th Fleet. Vice Admiral Carl Thomas has made it very clear China's actions are not only unprofessional, they are also irresponsible. And unless there are steps that are taken to counter it, this will become the new norm. It will become the new normal. China firing live missiles over Taiwan is unacceptable. That's exactly what China has been doing after US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit. And these are very strong comments that come from a top US official. He is the commander of the 7th Fleet, the Pacific Fleet, and he's making this extremely clear that there must be countermeasures taken in this regard so that China does not think that this is the new norm, this is the new normal, because China's actions are not only irresponsible, they're also unprofessional. The gorilla in the room, he described China as the gorilla in the room. I'll tell you more about this during the course of the broadcast. But first, as always, the headlines at 10. Another Kashmiri Pandit murdered in Kashmir's Shopian district. 45-year-old Sunil Kumar shot dead by terrorists. The victim's brother injured. Indo-Tibetan border police bus carrying 37 personnel and 2 policemen plunges into a river in Kashmir. 7 dead, 30 injured. Showdown over Savarkar posters in Shivmoga escalates. 4 arrested for stabbing a youth. Political blame game erupts over violence. 11 convicts sentenced to life in prison in the Bilkis Bano gang rape case released. Sweets distributed outside Kodra jail as the 11 walk free. FIFA suspends All India Football Federation action due to undue influence from third parties. India stripped of Under-17 Women's World Cup hosting rights too. Strong words from the United States of America as a top US Navy Admiral says China's actions over Taiwan are irresponsible and unprofessional. He says there must be consequences. If there is no pushback, this will become the new normal. And China has fired a number of missiles. According to Japan, at least 4 missiles were fired over Taiwan. Some missiles fell in Japan's exclusive economic zone. Now, the American Admiral says that China's actions are not only unprofessional, they're irresponsible and will become the new normal unless there is a strong pushback. The question remains, what does this pushback mean? What is it that Taiwan should do, and what is it that the United States of America and other democracies intend to do at this point of time? I'll tell you more about this, but first, take a look at our top story.
China has been escalating temperatures over Taiwan for 2 weeks now, firing missiles across the defiant island, splashing into the sea not far from Taiwan, and imposing a simulated naval blockade in waters around it. But after days of aggressive military muscle flexing, including the use of live weapons dangerously close to Taiwan, A top US military commander has made the strongest comment yet on the situation. Vice Admiral Carl Thomas, commander of the US 7th Fleet, headquartered in Japan, has described China's belligerence as the gorilla in the room that must be contested. His words come just days after a US congressional delegation arrived in Taiwan in the wake of the high-profile visit by US Speaker Nancy Pelosi earlier this month. Twin visits that have kept Chinese heat high over Taiwan. Admiral Thomas has said, if we just allow that to happen and we don't contest that, that'll be the next norm. It's irresponsible to launch missiles over Taiwan into international waters where the shipping lanes, where free shipping operates. It is Admiral Thomas's fleet that would be a major player in the Western Pacific should things escalate into an actual battle at sea. The fleet has some of the US Navy's most formidable assets, including the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier battle group and hundreds of other ocean-going assets. Admiral Thomas also says, if you don't challenge it, that is China, all of a sudden it can become just like the islands in the South China Sea have now become military outposts. They are now full functioning military outposts that have missiles on them, large runways, hangars, radars, listening posts. The warning from Admiral Thomas is hugely significant, not just because Admiral Thomas is Washington's man in the Western Pacific Theater and the South China Sea, because it shows that there is a recognition that the world sitting on its hands could make things much worse and embolden China. But the big question remains, will the US now act to check China? Bureau Report, India Today.
Will the world act to check China? Is the world on a virtual tinderbox? Remember, there's one conflict already between Russia and Ukraine. Is this developing into another conflict or a potential conflict between Taiwan and China? Given the aggression even today, there were a series of ADIZ violations by China and Taiwan, marked every one of them. I want to quickly cut across to India Today's Shiv Arur joining me for more on the story. Also with me is Sana Hashmi. She's a postdoctoral research fellow here in Taiwan. Also with me is Ambassador Ashok Sajanar. Three of the finest voices on matters military and diplomacy. But first, Shiv, to you. The gorilla in the room has been firing missiles over Taiwan. Very strong words from a serving three-star American General Vice Admiral Carl Thomas says this cannot become the new norm. What does this mean? What does this imply?
Gaurav, this is as far as it can go. This is probably the biggest US military comment that can come out at a time like this against China. Now remember, Chinese belligerence has been going on for many days now, since early this month when Nancy Pelosi was in Taiwan. Those missile, strikes that have been taking place around the island of Taiwan have been going on unchecked. And now the commander of the US 7th Fleet, headquartered in Japan, responsible for the Western Pacific, and very much the commander who will lead any kind of response to Chinese belligerence if an actual shot is fired. He has said that what China is doing with these missiles is the gorilla in the room, and if it is not contested, it will become the norm. It's a huge warning for someone who actually will be pulling many triggers, literally and figuratively, if China escalates things any further over Taiwan. Saying that something needs to happen now is huge. But beyond that, beyond the actual warning, beyond the actual comment that Admiral Carl Thomas has made, Gaurav, is the big question over whether what that contesting will actually be. Will the US do something now to deter China from firing those missiles? Because it is pretty clear, and you're in Taipei and you're seeing it as well, that even over the weekend, China has decided to renew those missile drills, and they're going to continue through this week and probably this month as well. So where does that stop? It's one thing to say words, and it's big that Admiral Thomas is saying them, but what will the US Navy or the US military actually do to follow the words of their 7th Fleet commander is that big question right now.
Oh, absolutely. And before I bring in Sana Hashmi and Ambassador Ashok Sajanar, I want to play out this report from Taipei. Once again, a series of violations of air defense identification zone of Taiwan by Chinese jets. 20 aircraft in one instance, and of these 18 were fighters. So you had Su-30, and those are huge air dominance fighters. You had the Shangyang J-17s, the J-16s, the J-11s. They are coming in. The Y-8 electronic intelligence aircraft are coming in. You've also had the surveillance aircraft that are coming in, and Chinese warships. They violate the air defense identification zone. This is that median, the line between mainland China and Taiwan, the island, and that's violated. Taiwan's launched its own aircraft. The moment Taiwan launches its aircraft, the Chinese aircraft go back. I bring you this report.
A belligerent China reacting to the visit of US lawmakers to Taiwan. Chinese fighters and warships were back conducting menacing drills as Taipei welcomed more American politicians to the island. This time a team led by Democratic Senator Ed Markey. While it showed aggression in the skies around Taiwan and at sea, Beijing went on a diplomatic offensive as well, sanctioning 7 top Taiwanese politicians and officials, including Taipei's representative to Washington, Li Qianxiao.
中方再次敦促美方恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定，慎重妥善处理涉台问题，停止在虚化、掏空、歪曲一个中国原则的错误道路上越走越远，以免对中美关系和台海和平稳定造成进一步损害。
China sees the visit by the US politicians and Taiwan's warm welcome to them as a rejection of its one China policy. The military exercises around Taiwan are Beijing's way of saying it will defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity come what may. Hours after the island's president met the US delegation, 30 Chinese aircraft and 5 naval vessels conducted military activity around Taiwan, and at least 15 Chinese fighters crossed the median line in the Taiwan Strait, on which there is a tacit understanding that no crossings should happen. China has intensified its show of military power ever since US Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan in the first week of August. A disgruntled China then launched an unprecedented live-fire military drill routine in 6 areas that practically encircle Taiwan.
China's constantly increasing the pressure and setting a new normal. The apprehension is this could actually lead to a conflict in the times ahead, and that is why Taiwan is taking all care to ensure that it protects its seas and its territory. Gaurav Sawant in Taipei, Taiwan for India Today. Let me quickly bring in Sana Hashmi and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar into this conversation. Sana Hashmi, how do you see this American statement? Vice Admiral Carl Thomas says this cannot become the new normal. What is it that Taiwan can do? What is it that Taiwan expects of the United States of America?
No, we have been seeing a lot of statements from the US since the very first day, but I feel that this statement is very different, and particularly because it's coming from a military personnel. And then I think we have to see the nature of the statement. He said that if we don't contest it, it becomes a norm, and he also mentioned the South China Sea. So I think we also have to focus on South China Sea here, that the Taiwan Strait doesn't become South China Sea where China has an upper hand. In fact, all these missile tests, it has been happening, and it's actually a routine and periodic activities to show that the US nuclear deterrent is safe. But I think why it is particularly important this time is that we have to see the timing of the test. It happened in July as well, and then it was apparently targeted against Russia and China. But now if we look at it today, it was done when China began its preliminary live fire drills, and it's been a long time, but now China is trying to establish a new normal, and this has become very clear to US, to Taiwan, and I think this is one of the reasons why US did it, and I think this is one of the major concerns of Taiwan as well as US, that we have to deter China from establishing a new normal.
China must be deterred from establishing a new normal. I'll just come to the Minuteman 3 exercise, ICBM firing in just a moment. But Ambassador Sajjan, I want to restrict our conversation for the moment to the statement made by Vice Admiral Carl Thomas, the US 7th Fleet Commander. When he says the gorilla in the room is firing missiles over Taiwan, it must be contested. China's irresponsible, China's unprofessional. What is he telling China? What's he telling Taiwan? How can the US and Taiwan deal with the gorilla in the room?
Yeah, you're very right, Gaurav. This statement is very significant. The statement is very relevant because I think both the American strategic community as well as the international strategic community has been seeing that the response of China, the uncalled for escalation that China has resorted to after Nancy Pelosi's visit. There has to be a response from the United States. Otherwise, what China has done in South China Sea in terms of militarizing, first of all, occupying islands, contested islands, which according to UNCLOS 1982 belong to other countries. First, it has occupied them, then it has militarized them, then it has created artificial islands. So we will have something similar, meaning if the actions of China in the South China Sea had been contested at the time in 2016. In 2015, you recall when Xi Jinping had gone to Washington, D.C., he had made a commitment to President Barack Obama that there is going to be no militarization. And it has gone back on those words. So, number one, China cannot be trusted in terms of what it says. What it says and what it does on the ground is totally different. Now, what it has done, as far as the Taiwan Straits are concerned, it is trying to sort of pile up pressure on Taiwan. I think I'll just make two very brief points here, Gaurav. One is that by sending this delegation by Congressman Ed Markey, I think the United States has taken a very important step, saying that it is not going to be cowed down by what China is doing. Secondly, what we see in Taiwan, in Taiwan, there is still a spirit of, continuing and, welcoming delegations.
Ambassador, I'll come to that spirit. In Taiwan, that gung-ho spirit over the next several days that India Today reports from Taipei and other parts of Taiwan. But for the moment, I want to move to that big story. It's a big, big signal. And that's the question. Is this a signal that the United States of America is sending out? The United States of America has tested an intercontinental ballistic missile, Minuteman III. And this has just been tested by the United States of America Air Force Strategic Space Command. This missile went and hit the intended target more than 9,000 kilometers away. The United States in a statement has said that the ICBM has hit the target accurately. Big, big story of the Minuteman III. And Sana Hashmi, is that the message that the US is giving out? One, it sent Nancy Pelosi. Of course, at that point of time, it was said that she came on her own free will. The President Joe Biden didn't want it, but then there is this bipartisan congressional delegation that's just followed. China carried out 4 drills, and now US test fires an ICBM, incidentally, which was postponed, as you rightly mentioned, twice. Once in April because of Russia-Ukraine conflict, and then because of Chinese drills earlier.
No, I think there's no going back for both US and Taiwan. And I think when Pelosi visited Taiwan, that was established at that point of time that, US and Taiwan, they have to cooperate together. And I think what we have to really focus on here is on Taiwan. Taiwan is not really escalating. Taiwan doesn't want to escalate. Its purpose is not to change the status quo. So this is China that is actually changing the status quo, and I think US is responding to that. And I think to some extent, I would also say that US is not trying to escalate in this situation. They're just trying to signal that if tomorrow China escalates, we are going to come and defend Taiwan. So I think this is a message that is being sent from the US side. But I would say that neither US nor Taiwan, their objective is just to expand Taiwan's international space. Their objective is not to retaliate. Their objective is not to fight the Chinese. So I think this is something that is that really needs to keep in mind when we talk about what is US doing today, but what we have to focus on, what China has been doing for the past 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay, so what China is doing in Taiwan, what around Taiwan, what China is doing in the South and East China Sea, and what China doing in the Indian Ocean region also remains, of course, for serious concern. So the Chinese have sent a spy ship. While they may call it a research ship, but it is practically one of the world's most modern spy ships. It can track movement of satellites. It can track movement of missiles. It can also map the ocean bed, and Indian Ocean bed extremely critical in the years ahead. So this spy ship was in the Indian Ocean region. It's now at the Hambantota port. India didn't want it. India was concerned. So was the United States of America. A signal was sent out to Sri Lanka saying this isn't on. It's not on to welcome a Chinese spy ship in Hambantota. Sri Lanka initially delayed it, but then buckled under Chinese pressure. Shivarur gets us more.
Bullying Taiwan with its missiles and fighter jets, needling India along the line of actual control in the Himalayas, and now China has turned to a mega sea espionage bid. Its aim to spy on India's maritime activities. China has sent a surveillance ship Yuan Wang 5 to dock in Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, overlooking concerns raised by India.
I would like to reiterate that the marine scientific research conducted by research ship Yuan Wang 5 conforms to international law and international common practice and will not affect the security and economic interests of any country.
The Yuan Wang 5 is one of China's latest generation space tracking ships used to monitor satellites, rockets and intercontinental ballistic missile launches, operating in the garb of maritime research and surveillance. India is worried that the spy ship can snoop on its military installations and bases, making the Navy and nuclear bases in South India like Kalpakkam and Kudankulam vulnerable. Several ports in South India could also be under the snooping radar. The Chinese ship may also snoop on rocket and missile launch centers in Chandipur in the integrated test range off the east coast of Odisha.
Barely 24 hours after India gifted Sri Lanka a maritime reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft Dornier, Colombo permitted a Chinese spy ship to dock at Hambantota. Now this Chinese vessel is capable of mapping not just the ocean floor but also tracking movement of long-range missiles and satellites. In times of conflict, a cause for grave concern.
Sri Lanka, caught in a Chinese debt trap, has handed over a majority share of the Hambantota port with a 99-year lease to a Chinese merchant company in 2017.
No, we are not placating China. I don't think that is the case. We have simply asked India and the United States, who in fact, as was said before, raised some concerns, but then we asked, give us concrete reasons for the ship not to be in Hambantota, and there were no concrete reasons given. And under our conventions that we have signed up, the Maritime Convention, various other laws of the sea that we have signed up, we cannot refuse a ship which is asking for replenishments and docking in Sri Lanka. So
India has asserted that it will take all measures to shield its installations from the snooping eyes of the Chinese vessel.
Sri Lanka once again permitted them to dock this ship at Hambantota, but assured the government of India and the Americans that while the ship is docked there, they will not permit them to undertake any research activity whatsoever. They are there only for refuel. Only time will tell what was the actual purpose for which they stayed there.
India continues to court Sri Lanka by handing over maritime assets, recently giving a Dornier 228 maritime patrol and reconnaissance aircraft to Lanka to reaffirm bilateral security ties. With Gaurav Sawant in Taipei, Taiwan, Bureau Report, India Today.
I once again want to bring in Shivarur for more on this ship. It's a cause for concern, especially with the ship capable of mapping India's military assets along the coastal belt.
Gaurav, there are two answers to the question over, this so-called Chinese research ship that's docked in Hambantota in Sri Lanka. Number one, let's make no mistake. This is an advanced Chinese vessel capable of conducting a great deal of surveillance, and espionage also if necessary. So it has all the equipment on board to do that. Two things. One, it's not like this has caught India off guard. This was expected. It was in the works for a while. India is completely prepared. I've had a word with the military as well. They're not overly alarmed because they've had advance notice about this kind of thing, and they're capable of masking what is essential and secret and things like that. The reason why this has become a big deal is because a country that is in total disarray and collapse has basically ignored a formal objection that had been registered by India on the docking of this Chinese ship at Hambantota in Sri Lanka. On the other hand, Gaurav, despite this objection, there is the view that Sri Lanka was not really in a position to call any shots with China right now. It usually never is in a position to call shots, but at a time like this, when it is desperate, it is in survival mode, it simply does not have the diplomatic or strategic heft to defy something that China wants to do right now. It's going to be difficult tricky rather for India to navigate how it handles this, because basically in front of the world it looks like India had raised an objection and Sri Lanka has disobeyed it, but it's a little bit more complex than that. And let's never forget, just as China tries to make inroads into the Indian Ocean, conduct surveillance under the garb of research on Indian assets and Indian nuclear facilities, India does very much the same. Let there be no mistake about that.
Sana, how does Taiwan watch China and see these activities, whether it's around the Taiwan Straits or in the Indian Ocean, or China's jet-trap diplomacy?
I think this is not something new that Taiwan is seeing right now. And I feel that they have been seeing it for a very, very long time. Taiwan is one of the oldest victims of China's aggression. And I feel if you look at China, China is doing new is that it is open multiple fronts at the same time. And also this is not something we have been seeing this for the past at least 3 years. Taiwan is one example, India is one example, and now we're seeing Sri Lanka, and we know that it's primarily India. There's no doubt about that. So I feel that this is one of the reasons why India really needs to talk to Taiwan, and we really need to learn how to tackle the China threat and also So it's very important for, and I think Taiwan has several times stated that we need to talk to like-minded countries because we have we have a common interest. And when we talk about shared interest,
the clear message is, do not let China browbeat you. And if democracies come together, then there is a way to checkmate expansionist forces. And over the course of next several days, we will continue to report from ground zero in Taipei and of course from different parts of Taiwan. But for the moment, Sana Hashmi and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, many thanks for joining me here on this India First special broadcast from Taipei. News and updates continue on India Today.